Hey everyone, in today's video, I'm going to share with you my Sony portrait editing workflow in Lightroom and Photoshop. So the photo we're editing is the one up here on the screen. It was taken on the Sony a7 Mark II with a Metabones 4 adapter and the Canon 50mm 1.2 lens. And I also have a fancy new keyboard cam set up for today's video because I want to show you all the shortcuts that I press while I'm editing, and also a little bit later on when we move to Photoshop, I'm going to be editing with my Wacom tablet. So jumping straight into this photo, we're going to start editing it in Lightroom first. And I want to give this image a really kind of clean, simple, bright and warm edit. So that's what we're going to do. So the first thing I want to do is sharpen up my image. If you guys have watched any of my other editing tutorials, you know that I love sharpening. That's like the first thing I do, just so that it's out of the way and I don't have to think about it anymore. The next thing that I'm noticing with this shot is the dark vignetting around the edges. So we're going to fix that up with lens correction. And I'm going to tick enable profile corrections, which normally it automatically detects what brand and what lens that you were using, but we're just going to have to input that manually for this photo. So I'm going to pick the 50mm 1.2, and you'll see here that it's removed all that vignetting from the image. I'm just going to get rid of distortion for the sake of this tutorial so it's easier to see before and afters. But I like how it looks a lot cleaner without the vignette for this photo. So the next thing I want to start working on is the tones of the image. So I'm going to use our tone curve to add a little bit of contrast and give it a little bit of a style by matting the blacks and the whites of the image. So I like to kind of put in my points roughly at first and then slowly move them around and see how they're affecting my image. So for this photo, I want it to be a little bit more bright and airy. So I want to go for a bit higher in like the whites and the highlights of the curve and less dark in the shadows. So I think just about there looks really good. I'll show you a before and after. Now I want to work on the white balance and the tint. I want this image to be fairly warm, so I'm going to bring up the temperature, and I'm also going to bring the tint up into the pinks a little bit as the background was looking a little bit too green for my liking. So with the tones of the image, I want to bring up the overall exposure just a little bit more to make our model stand out in the photo. And I'm also going to bring my highlights down just to bring back a tiny bit more detail, like in the background and in her swimsuit, which is quite bright. And I'm also going to bring down the blacks just to add that little bit more contrast in the overall image. So the next thing I want to do is play around with the colors. So I want to use the tone curve for this. We're going to start with our blue curve, and I want to give this image a little bit of like a honey kind of warm tone. I think would look really nice. So I usually start by pulling up the blacks of the blues up, so all the blacks kind of turn blue. And then I like to bring that down to add that nice warm yellow color. And then just to make sure her skin looks nice and balanced, I also like to pull the whites of the blue curve up. And as you can see, that kind of balances out her skin tone a little bit more and makes it look more kind of natural. So again, I just like to kind of plot down my points and then I move them little by little until I'm happy with what the image looks like. Cool. So I think just about there is good. And I'm also going to do a similar curve with the greens, just to bring that little bit of warmth back into the photo as well. So by pulling down the shadow section of the greens, it adds more reds into the shadows. And then by pulling the whites of the greens up, it adds that little bit of green to the highlights as well. If you guys have seen my work, you would know that I love to have that green kind of tint in my images. So I always have a little hint of that somewhere. Okay, so I think that's it for our tone curves. Here's a before and after of just the curves. And the next thing I want to focus on is HSL. So I don't want to do too much here, just tweak it a little bit. So I want to bring the luminance of the orange up, which will basically make her skin look a little bit more like brighter in the photo. And I also want to bring the yellows up just to blow out that background a tiny bit more. And that's about it. I'm happy with what that looks like. All right, so now we're gonna jump into Photoshop. So I'm gonna switch out my mouse pad for my Wacom tablet. Alright, so here we are in Photoshop, and as you can see, I'm using a Wacom tablet now. I like to do this when I'm retouching, as it's a lot more comfortable to retouch with a tablet than it is with a mouse. And this is the Wacom Intuos, I don't know, in the size medium, and it's a Bluetooth tablet. I recently got it to upgrade from my old one, which was the Wacom Bamboo Fun, but yeah, I really love this one so far. So we did open up the image in Photoshop, but I am noticing one little thing that I want to fix up in Lightroom, so we'll just jump back quickly. So one last thing that I noticed is that her legs are quite bright in the photo since the sun is kind of like hitting them straight on. So we're going to use a adjustment brush in Lightroom and just kind of paint over them. And then bring down the exposure a little bit and the blacks as well. And I also want to bring up the tint just a little bit more. There we go. Okay, now back to Photoshop. Okay, so the first thing that I like to do when I'm in Photoshop is to retouch the skin. So I'm going to press play on my skin retouching action, which is available for free on digitalfilmactions.com. I'll leave a link down below in case you guys want to download it and try it out. So I'm going to be working on the color layer. So this layer up here, this is frequency separation retouching. I've got a whole tutorial that's very detailed about that if you guys want to check it out. But the top layer is basically all the texture in the photo, and the middle layer here are the colors. So this is what we'll be working on. So I'm going to zoom into the face. And I want to be using our healing brush tool. So I like to hit the shortcut J for that. And I make sure that the sample is set to current layer. So I'm going to zoom right in, and I like to do really simple natural retouching, so this should be pretty quick. But I'm going to start by selecting a lighter colored area of the skin and then slowly painting over the little bits of eye bags here, just to kind of blend that out a little bit. And I'll do the same to the other side as well. So as you can see, our model has like so many beautiful freckles, which I don't want to lose. So that's why I'm using this frequency separation technique. You're able to do some really nice skin retouching, but also being able to keep the natural kind of texture and the freckles and stuff like that, which I really love. So I'm just like quickly doing a little few sections of retouching around the face. And up here on the forehead as well. And that is pretty much done. So I'll show you a before and after of that retouching. So I really don't want to do too much else to the face. Since this is like a swimsuit shoot and we're on the beach, we do want it to look really natural and not perfectly retouched. So I'm really happy with what that looks like. The next thing I want to focus on is her body. So when I'm looking at the image, I'm kind of noticing that her arm is a little bit patchy here. It did end up getting quite cold towards the end of the day, so I think that's why there's like little kind of red patches. So the same as what we did to the face, I'm just going to zoom right in and start retouching out a few of those more defined patches here on the skin. And yeah, so I'm basically holding down Alt and sampling from a kind of clean texture of skin and then painting over these little blotchy bits to kind of blend them out to the rest of the arm. And so this video isn't like an hour long. I'm just gonna speed up this process here and I'll be back with you when I finish on this section. Okay, so this is our retouched image. I'll show you a before and after. And there's still a couple more things that I want to do to make this look like a really kind of clean final image. So the next thing I want to do is a little bit of dodging and burning. So I kind of want to brighten up under the eyes here and also still even out the skin tone a little bit more on her body. So what I'm going to do is make a new layer by using the shortcut Command-Shift-N. And we're going to change the mode to soft light and tick the box that says fill soft light with 50% gray and hit OK. So then I'm going to hit B for the brush and I'm going to have it at a really soft setting, an opacity of 10% and a flow of 3%. So it's like really subtle and really, really soft. And what this does is, oh, and I have the color set on white as well. So I'll just show you, if you kind of brush over an area, it brightens it up. Wait, let me put it on like harsh. There we go. So yeah, you can like paint over darker areas and make them a little bit brighter. So I'm gonna zoom in here on the face. And with a nice small brush, I'm gonna start painting over these kind of darker areas that I wanna brighten up. So yeah, as you can see, it's really bringing in a lot more light under the face and also keeping it looking quite natural as well. I'm just gonna paint over the kind of smile lines around here as well. Under the chin, I like to paint in here in between the eyes too. I feel like that adds a lot of brightness into a face. And yeah, this is like super subtle editing, but it really makes a big difference when you do a before and after. So I'll show you what that looks like. That's the before and that's with the on. And I'm going to do the same thing again with her arm and just paint with a bit of a bigger brush over these kind of patchy areas to blend them in a little bit more together. Oh, and in case you're looking at the keyboard cam, I've got my hands over the square brackets as I like to make my brush smaller and bigger as I'm editing, depending on what I'm brushing over. So that's a nice little shortcut to know actually. So I'll show you a before and after of that soft light dodging layer. So this is before and this is after. So as you can see, it's kind of like evened out all the skin tone a little bit. Her face looks nice and bright, which I love. And the arm area isn't as distracting as I felt like it was before. So then here is an overall before and after with and without the retouching as well. And then the last thing that I want to do that I think would really kind of help this portrait a little bit is I want to use the liquify tool to kind of lessen all this hair that's kind of flying around in the wind here. So I'm going to select all our layers and hit Command J to duplicate them and then Command E to mash them all together. So that's basically just all of that together. And then I'm going to hit the shortcut Command Shift X, I think it is. Yes, it is. And here we have our liquify tool. And I'm going to take a brush that's fairly big and really slowly and subtly start pushing this hair in. When you're liquefying, it's really important to try and retain the original shape of what something looks like, because I feel like it can look really unnatural otherwise. And I also like to liquefy little by little just so it's not overly obvious. But yeah, I think that right there looks really good. And here's a before and after. I just feel like it's a little bit less distracting if it's slightly smaller. But yeah, that is pretty much the end of my retouching video. I really hope you guys enjoyed today's tutorial and let me know what you think of this camera here with the Wacom tablet. Hopefully it was helpful for you guys to see like the shortcuts that I'm pressing and like how I'm using the tablet as well. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, you guys. I upload new videos every Wednesday and every Saturday, so I'll see you guys all next time. Bye!